Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Keith Whalen from RPI Consultants, and I'm very pleased to welcome you to today's webinar on enterprise automation for your business. We have a very special guest today from Infor, Mr. Sam Green, who's the Senior Director of Infor Platform Technology and a foremost AI advocate. And joining him today, we have our very own Jeremy Stoltzfus, well known throughout the webinar circuit, one of our principal solution architects. Thank you, Jeremy and Sam.
All right. Thank you, Keith, for that wonderful introduction. I don't know about foremost, but we'll go with that, I think.
Works.
Yeah, so a little bit of background on myself. I've been with Lawson and Infor for about 14 years, handled everything from COBOL programming to data integrations, and now I own ION as its product director.
And of course, I'm Jeremy Stoltzfus, technical consultant with RPI. I've been with RPI for about 7 years now, leading Cloud Suite, FSM, GHR implementations.
Very good. So today we're going to broach kind of a new subject, a new topic around, some of Infor's capabilities. We're going to be discussing enterprise automation. Earlier this week, we formally launched our enterprise automation offering. There was a webinar that you could register for on Tuesday. If you're interested, I would suggest you going out and register for that, and you can see it on demand, if you missed it. So we're going to kind of take what was done on Tuesday and tailor it for our services customers, for healthcare customers that you guys work with, and other service industries as well. So with that, let's get started. First off, I do have to show a disclaimer. I may misspeak, and this kind of covers me in that respect, and I may also talk about some roadmap items. I can't promise those things are delivered on time or maybe even delivered at all. We might change our mind, so let's just keep that in mind as we go through this. So the first question I'm sure everyone asked, when this webinar was posted, why should I care? Why should I go view this webinar? So that's the first thing that we're gonna talk about. Today, in prepping for this webinar, I got an email from Health Leaders. It's a newsletter that I subscribe to, kind of ear to the ground on all things healthcare. And in that email, they threw up a stat. They said 58% of clinicians say too many administrative tasks contribute to their burnout. And that was a survey done by Medline or Medscape in June of 2023, which fit right in with what we're talking about. If we look at, some of the issues that our customers, our users are having, they're concerned about service delivery, to their patients, to their customers, to their constituents, if they're in public sector. We care about time. How much time do our employees spend doing these administrative tasks? What can we automate? What should we automate? And of course, how do we reduce our costs as a company, as an organization, while still producing high levels of service? And then burnout, I've already touched on that, but how do we elevate our employees' satisfaction while still being able to complete their jobs on time? So with that, let's talk about some actual outcomes that we've been able to achieve through our customer showcases, our Augmented Intelligence service offerings, that we've been working on for the last 2 years. So these are actual outcomes from our customers. So one example would be allowing customers to maintain compliance. Many industries have compliance requirements, whether they're from state, local, federal governments. There are things that they have to do just to stay in business.
So a lot of organizations have to adhere to an OIG compliance list for their vendors. Is this something that's capable of handling?
That is absolutely something we can do. We have the tools in place. We can pull data from finance and supply management. Let's look at our vendor list. Let's look at the data on the OIG vendor website, and let's compare those. So instead of doing maybe a spot check of a handful of vendors every 6 months, every quarter, every week, let's automate that process so we know we're constantly in compliance. When it comes to other pieces of supply chain, we can reduce overhead and stockouts. We have products out there that allow us to analyze our inventory consumption. Let's look at our purchasing history. Let's look at our consumption levels and compare those. and see how can we optimize this? Because we know carrying extra inventory is expensive, but running out of it can be even worse, especially if that's, you know, a life-saving item that we need. You know, say it's a filter for a dialysis machine for kidney patients. Those are things we don't want to run out of.
So as we talk about this in regards to enterprise automation, though, how is this different or more advantageous than the existing inventory intelligence that's already available to customers?
That's a good question. So we have had inventory intelligence out for a few years now, and we've had pretty decent adoption to it. And customers have seen some good successes with it. What we've done is we have basically taken additional models and made it more generic so it can handle additional industries. So if you're in a service industry, you're not necessarily in the healthcare industry. You might also not be running FSM. Maybe you're an HR customer and you have a third-party vendor that handles your ERP. For us, it doesn't matter because we weren't built just on top of FSM business classes or database tables. So reducing fraud exposure, that's another thing that can kind of come in with maintaining that compliance, but it also goes a step further. So if I automate tasks like requisition entry, invoice payment, now, you know, I might not be an Infor GRC customer. You know, I might not have governance, risk, and compliance. How do I know that someone isn't buying stuff from their favorite vendors? You know, now I can go in and analyze where purchases are made, who's writing those checks, things like that. And then, of course, reducing bad data and incomplete data. If I can bring in an invoice, scan it with an OCR application, I don't have somebody fat fingering data. You know, not only am I not wasting their time, but I'm also, you know, reducing mistakes. So here are some quotes from some customers we've been working with for a few years that I'd just like to highlight. You know, the first quote from Pilot Flying J, you know, they've been a long-time Lawson Infor customer, you know, active with user groups, things like that. So a lot of people know them. You know, they really like our enterprise applications, our ERPs. They like Lawson. They like, you know, FSM. But the thing that really sticks out to them is the fact that we have this technology layer that sits on top of everything. And they think that's what sets us apart. So it's not just that, you know, we're solving these, you know, business problems with finance, supply chain. We're actually building true enterprise automation and building artificial intelligence solutions on top of those applications that they already have. And it's part of one composable platform. And that's really the power of Infor. Another customer that we've been working with over the last year is Bozeman Health. You know, they've been using Coleman AI to analyze their vendors. You know, let's look at their past performance. You know, we've had KPIs in the past coming from FSM, you know, analyzing that data, but let's broaden the scope of this analysis. Let's bring in data from outside sources as well. Analyze these vendors and make sure that they're using the best vendors that they possibly can. Bozeman has also used Coleman's digital assistant. You know, that's another leg of automation. Let's bring in a digital assistant to help nurses find those items that they're looking for. So this next slide, one of the big questions we get, which, you know, Jeremy, you and I spoke about this in May. You know, when I was first talking with RPI about enterprise automation and our strategy, and you said, well, how do I know what I should automate? Like what's out there? You know, what can I do? And so the first piece of that is let's look for, what are you doing manually? Is it something that, you know, it might be value added, but it's not a real high value. It's just something you have to do, like OIG compliance.
Right.
It doesn't add a lot of value to the business, but on the flip side, if I'm not compliant, it causes massive fines, you know, loss in reputation. So there are some huge implications there. So are they complex processes? Is it something that is prone to mistakes? how can I use data to drive my decision making and maybe make that process less complex. Then of course, how long are these processes? Are they time consuming? Is it, that's something that's prime for automation. I really like the OIG vendor checklist example because I think it's kind of the exception that proves the rule. It's not necessarily a complex task. It's not a long process to spot check vendors, which is what a lot of our customers are doing, but it's something that should be a long process because you should be validating all of those vendors. You shouldn't just be spot checking, but because of the overhead involved, the payoff is much greater than.
So you're saying processes that may be a relatively, yes, they're manual, but they may not take really long, but it's not part of the organization's regular routine to do that.
Right.
This is a way to ensure better data integrity, better quality of their service, because they can set it up and have it all be automated and run it more frequently, as opposed to right now, maybe they're running it once or twice a year, but it really should be done monthly.
Right. Yeah. So, and it's kind of a change in mindset. Instead of what can I do with the resources I have, what should I be doing instead? Because now I have tools that allow me to expand my use cases. So I'm just going to cover a few more outcomes that a lot of our customers have been able to achieve to kind of show, the benefits our customers have seen and the value they're getting from these. And a lot of these things these outcomes they're getting, they're happening rapidly. How long does an implementation of FSM take?
12, 18 months or more.
Yeah. So the interesting part, not to put RPI down, but we can provide value in 90 days with some of our enterprise automation solutions. And we can do that during an implementation. So if we're going through and we're rolling out FSM, we're configuring supply chain, well, let's insert an inventory intelligence solution at the same time we're configuring the system. It doesn't have to be an afterthought. So while you guys are going through, you're configuring supply chain, you can work with us to get those solutions in place so that from day one, you're getting much more value out of the product. So one of the things that one of our customers has done is a price recommender. So they go through and they analyze their sales. They look at margins, revenues, costs, all that stuff. And they look at where should my products be priced. Now, it's not something where we analyze the data and we just say, here's your prices. We'll do it again, in a year. No, it's something we're constantly going through and tuning. So this one single customer is producing 100,000 price recommendations a month, which is pretty impressive. I don't know how often they were doing that manually, but I'm guessing it was nowhere near that. We have another module that helps us kind of analyze our assets within a company. Maybe not necessarily applicable to some of our services or healthcare customers, but some of our manufacturing customers have found this one really helpful, where they've automated their work order creation. So they can look at the mean time between failures for a machine or a piece of equipment, and they can automate a work order saying, we think this is going to be failing because we've looked at all this history. Let's get a work order in there to prevent that breakdown.
So kind of preventative maintenance to allow something to
maybe
come in, just be reviewed or looked at on a scheduled basis as opposed to unscheduled and disrupting workflow.
Absolutely. Sales forecasting, that's another big thing we can do. We've worked with a handful of customers on our forecasting features. We take their past sales, we look at pipeline, things like that, run it through our models, and we can say, okay, we now have a way to help you reduce your inventory cost, which should bring your revenue up because now we've reduced our costs. We know where our sales are. We don't have to have that inventory on hand. So this is kind of close to that inventory intelligence solution that we've offered in healthcare as well. Then, of course, we can drive a whole bunch of other operational efficiencies, in the manufacturing space as well. This is another example of that. But then something that definitely affects our larger customers is anomaly detection. I may not have a centralized payroll processing or inventory processing, invoice processing location. Maybe their data is coming in from all sorts of directions. I could have third-party systems pushing data into FSM. So how do we take all that data, coalesce it, and figure out where the anomalies are? If I'm used to taking 3-4 weeks to close the books in GL, I don't have to wait till start my close process to find the errors. Now I can go through and I can analyze my GL transactions and surface those errors before I get into the close process.
So is that something that, hey, these are the things that we typically see and have to fix, where you basically teach this or instruct this model to go out and just regularly look for those things?
Let's look at our past data, but then we can also use things like business rules or maybe a decision manager. We can create custom rules for our business that say these are kind of the parameters we want to operate in.
How is that different than, okay, well, I'm an accountant and I know that if I just run this report looking for certain parameters, it's going to give me a listing of things that are potentially a problem or something I need to look at. So how is that different? How is the enterprise automation different than me just running some report and looking at the results?
That's a good question. It's about being proactive. So instead of having to sit down as an accountant, run this report, and then maybe scan through it line by line, I just get a notification. I get something that surfaces to my workspace that says, okay, Jeremy, I found this anomaly in this report or, this list of transactions. You should probably go look at it.
And in the example of a GL close, that can be something that's happening all month long. So it's not during the close cycle that I'm scrambling to address the 1,000 issues on this report.
Exactly. It's constant. It's periodically, I can, so that when I come to that close process, I can reduce the number of days it takes me to close. Another big thing is forecasting. If I have a large organization, how do I forecast payroll for my employees? Making sure that's accurate makes my employees much happier. Nobody likes a paycheck that's wrong. It's a pain for HR, it's a pain for payroll, and it's a pain for our employees. Let's make sure that's something we can do accurately. So there are a few different things that kind of come into play when we talk about enterprise automation. So we've kind of covered, what are the challenges our customers see, and we've covered some of the outcomes they've been able to achieve. So now we're going to get into how do we actually achieve that. And we do that through basically three pillars of automation. The first is our system-centric automation, which is our iPaaS solution. So ION, API gateway, could be IPA, if you're an FSM customer.
So these are already things that we're doing as part of an implementation project, right?
Yeah.
Or even beyond that, as a customer might expand or need to integrate. So what makes this more different? Because like I said, I do an implementation and I'm writing a dozen interfaces, right?
Yep.
As part of that implementation.
Yeah. The difference is what we do with that data after it's been coalesced. Now we have an AI-centric engine that can automate decisions, that can coalesce that data, analyze it, and present our users with information.
So essentially, you're saying, when we do the implementation and we're doing these things, we're already a third of the way there.
Yeah, basically. And that can be the hardest part, is getting all the data in the right location. And then the last piece, which we actually just released on Tuesday during our enterprise automation webinar, is our RPA solution, our robotic process automation. So you might have some legacy systems that aren't API enabled. Maybe they don't even have, an export to file type function. Maybe they're a website. that only provides a file that you can download. Well, there was no way to automate that with our other iPaaS solutions.
And let's also do some sort of screen scraping. So if I go in
Yeah.
to a third-party system, maybe it's looking up candidate background checks or something like that, where I have to log in, put in the candidate number or some sort of information, and then it just on screen gives me results.
Right.
Where then I have to turn to my GHR application and enter those results in manually.
Yeah. Now with RPA, we can do that. So that's kind of the piece that was missing for our true enterprise automation solution. So now that we have that, now that opens up a whole lot of doors for us as far as which business processes we can automate. If we go back to this Coleman piece, Coleman's been around for a number of years. We launched it in Inforum quite a few years ago, but we haven't had a lot of adoption with it as a standalone product. So a lot of people have asked us, well, what good is Coleman?
So is it provisioned with customers' multi-tenant accounts or systems now? They're tenants now?
Yeah.
Right.
Customers own Coleman. If you're a Infor OS multi-tenant customer, if you're an FSM customer in the cloud suite, you own Coleman.
So is there anything that I need to do to turn it on? Because I've seen the little button in the toolbar, I know that allows me to click on it, but it doesn't seem to do anything. So how does that come into play here?
Yeah, it's all provisioned as part of the cloud suite. But the piece that we were missing, which we'll cover a little bit here, is we were missing solutions. So Infor is good at developing tools, but sometimes we're slow to provide a solution to our customers. Having tools is one thing. It's great. Technology is awesome. It's cool. It keeps you and I employed, but customers want outcomes. Right. They say, okay, you have an AI engine. What do I do with it? I don't have the skill set. I don't have the time to actually implement an AI solution.
So out of the box, it doesn't really do anything. You have to essentially build some sort of solution into it or teach it how to do something.
Yep. And that's where RPI comes in and Infor comes in, because you implement our customers, as a partner, you understand the implementation, you understand the data structures, you understand maybe there's custom business classes you guys have written that Infor doesn't know about. And we understand the Coleman side. So that's where we can work together to really solidify this Coleman piece and bring everything together. And that's where we get into this, what is kind of our recipe for success here? The first piece that we need to know is, do we have the right data? We know our own applications, but we don't always know how they're implemented specifically. So like I said, maybe you guys have created some custom business classes. Maybe you've added user fields. So you guys can help us go into these customers and see and tell us, this is the base set of data you guys are probably looking for. However, we've added a business class that provides this additional information or tracks this other piece of, business driver for us.
So value add during implementation, because you mentioned that earlier, where you can work alongside. We're undercovering as we're doing the implementation. We're trying to bring data in. We're uncovering all of these. Okay, well, this is a problem that we run into frequently. And trying to come up with those solutions to, work around those problems or come up with solutions so that we can address those problems as they come up.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why it's nice to, I know it's scary to hear, probably from a customer's perspective, let's do this during an implementation or before go live, because it seems like a lot of extra work, but it can save us a lot of time on the back end though. And it really gives you a good solution from day one. It's not something you have to wait for.
And honestly, through implementations, what I see a lot, we'll uncover some things and maybe because it's a rush timeline or whatever, okay, we'll just get live and we'll address it, but it doesn't always get addressed after the fact. So.
Right, because it's easy to maintain status quo once you're done. And people get tired. Going live it's a complex task. It's understandable, and that's why we have this 90-day iteration which we really like and our customers like because they can see value. So yeah, maybe if that go live, that implementation is taking 18 months, let's insert one of these EA projects into that process so we can show, you know, our customers, look, here's the value you're going to get from this application when we're live. You know, I know we're struggling right now, we're having some issues, you know, might be down, but look, here's a win. Here's something positive we can look forward to.
Right.
And, you know, really, the whole thing is not just about technology for technology's sake, as I mentioned earlier. It's really about taking the technology and the people and combining it with your processes and just constantly iterating. You know, as changes come in, we bring them into the cycle, make changes, do tuning, and just try and improve our customers' experience as much as we can. So there are definitely some challenges that we see when, you know, customers are trying to reach these positive business outcomes. They might have various automation tools. You know, before Infor didn't offer RPA. You know, we had an iPaaS solution. You know, so maybe you tried to do some sort of automation project earlier and it didn't work because you didn't have the skills or you didn't have the right tools. Maybe you didn't have tools that worked well together. You know, this first line, automation tools that just, they don't function well together. They're separate applications, separate vendors. They have different release schedules, different maintenance plans. You know, now that we've released RPA, we have all of these automation tools in one composable platform. You know, it all comes pre-wired. You don't have to do anything. Having the right people is another big thing. You know, there's a reason people hire RPI to do implementations. You guys know FSM, HCM, forward and backward. You know, so you guys can provide a lot of good insight into those things. When it comes to Infor's Augmented Intelligence solution or service, it's the same thing. You know, we give the customer the tools, but they might not know how to use it. You know, they just lack the know-how. You know, hiring a data scientist and a data science team is very expensive. So that's what we provide you. We provide you that team on a subscription service.
And, you know, a lot of clients that I work with, you know, have a small support staff that support their Infor system. So
right.
This is definitely a win for those that may have some big data problems, but a small support team.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and then how do I know, like kind of we started this conversation, how do I know what process do I automate? Well, we have, I know it says out of the box, but as a developer, I hate that term. It's like 80% there, we'll say, you know, because nothing is ever 100%. It always requires some configuration, some fine tuning, but we have solutions out there. You know, we have a catalog of models for Coleman that we can run through. With our launch of Enterprise Automation, I think we have 8 different solutions that you can basically go to the marketplace and investigate those, look at the documentation. You can see our YouTube videos that show, oh, this was the solution that was implemented at this customer. This was the value they got, you know, and it's not just us saying, yep, we built this, you know, in a lab somewhere. We actually built it with a customer. So it's been validated, it's been vetted.
So as you're building additional solutions, you know, maybe it's something healthcare specific, or maybe it's something manufacturing specific. So as you build those additional solutions, do they become available to other customers then to implement?
Yeah, they do. And that's the cool part about our Augmented Intelligence solution. When you subscribe for that, you know, that is an additional SKU. It's something you have to add on. You already own the tools, but what that additional SKU gives you is access to that catalog, which is constantly growing. Mm-hmm. You know, so you might be able to implement 2, maybe 3, you know, enterprise automation or augmented intelligence solutions a year, but you have this catalog you have access to. So you can plan your 3, 4 years, 5 years out. You know, I worked with a customer, they're looking at that 5-year plan. You know, they have huge aspirations. You know, they started with one little use case and they were able to show value to their users. So then they started looking at that catalog. Okay, where else can I go? Mm-hmm. You know, these are not necessarily bespoke solutions for a customer. They're solutions that can be applied across the industry.
Now, is that a customer taking that catalog solution and basically then tweaking it on their own, or is this where Infor still supports and helps with that?
If they have a team that understands those technologies, they could. It's not a black box. Coleman AI is a white box. You can go in and you can look at where the inputs come in, look how your decision was made, and why you got those outputs.
So if something were to change around the model later on, 6 months, 9 months down the road, a couple of new fields added or something like that to track additional pieces of information, it wouldn't be overly difficult with the right knowledge and training, obviously, for a customer to just go in and make those couple little tweaks.
Yeah, they could potentially do that. And as part of the subscription, we constantly push changes out to those models. So as we're tuning them get feedback from other customers, you get those advantages too. You get those improvements. And that's, one of the big things that I briefly touched on was the cost of having a data scientist or data science team, because it's not just one person, it's really a team. It's too expensive for a lot of our customers to actually undertake these projects on their own. They don't have an extra 2-3 million just sitting on the balance sheet saying, what should I do with it? They're doing this because they want to reduce costs. They want to, make sure they have healthy budgets. And that's where, the flexible pricing model that we have, as part of our augmented intelligence solution really helps out. So next, I think we should go through one of these examples of enterprise automation.
Okay, so let me see if I got this straight. So this is the OIG vendor check that we talked about earlier.
Right.
So if I'm looking at this, I'm basically seeing a couple different data sources coming into the data lake, right? We've got the OIG data, and this is coming from that external OIG site.
Yep, that website.
That website that hosts that. So that's coming through an ION workflow or API calls, or what's this box here? Yeah,
so RPA is going out to that website, downloading that new file, and using our API gateway to push that data into data lake.
Push it into data lake. So then that's, okay, so then up here, it's additional data, but this is coming from the financials application, basically the vendor master. So that's through replication sets, I'm assuming, down into data lake.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, so then this box here, the Coleman ML box, number 3 there, that's what looks like it's going through, it's comparing the vendor data from financials and against the OIG data and basically checking those vendors on what criteria.
Yeah, so it's not just looking for, does ABC Inc. match ABC Inc.? It's doing things like fuzzy logic. So maybe I have a vendor on the list that has changed their address, but their name is the same, or vice versa. The address is the same, but they've changed their name. So we have a bunch of different match criteria that we can use to basically decide, is this vendor on the exclusion list?
Okay. So once a match, whether it's a clear match or a fuzzy match, is found, then that information is passed back up into the FSM application.
Yeah.
We're putting that vendor on hold, or are we alerting somebody, or all of the above, or any of the options?
Yeah, I mean, those are all options. Obviously, if we have a vendor that shows up on the list and we've basically cross-verified and validated that vendor should not be used, we want to make sure that vendor isn't used. We want to put them on hold, so I can't create new invoices, or I can't, create new purchase orders against that. So then, we just use the APIs that are already sitting there in the landmark layer to update that vendor.
And again, this could be part of, maybe we're creating new vendors. Can we trigger this to run at the time we add a new vendor, or a client adds a new vendor to their vendor master and does that check immediately?
Yeah, like we said at the beginning, this is a manual process that I might have done every couple of weeks. Maybe I do it once a month, once a quarter. Now we can just constantly run this. So if an auditor comes in, and they want to see, okay, I want to prove to me that you're not using any vendors on the OIG exclusion list. Oh, let me bring up this application. Here's the last time it was run. Here's the vendors that were flagged. Here's the vendors that weren't flagged. Nothing showed up this last time.
Could this be even interjected in, say a customer is using the request vendor process in Cloud Suite Financials, where somebody enters the information and goes through an approval process?
Right.
Could this be interjected in the middle to kind of check all that and basically flag it to say, hey, if you want to approve this, just so you're aware, it's on the exclusion list?
Yeah, that's the beautiful thing about this. We have this solution available. This is why I don't like that term out of the box, because you just gave me 3 different ways to implement this in 15 seconds.
Right.
So yeah, what fits my organization? Do I allow people to create vendors, or is it one consolidated role that creates vendors? And that it's flexible. We can kind of do what we want with it. But the important thing is we're automating a process that used to take hours or tons of time. And it didn't really add a lot of value, but it protects our company. It protects our reputation. So let's step into another example here. So here I've kind of modeled our rec to check process. It starts over on the far side. I've got my nurse who's using a digital assistant to locate some sort of item, at a PAR location. And then maybe that
and is that one of those, so you said about using digital assistant, and I said, so is that something that you can get, because like you said, when you've got the digital assistant or Coleman, it doesn't do anything out of the box.
Right. It comes empty. Coleman doesn't have any skills on its own. So the FSM teams, HRT teams, they've developed skills that we have out on the marketplace that customers can just go download, deploy those into their tenant, and then they can use that to find items. So if I'm a nurse, and this was the Bozeman example, one of their stat CNAs, when she needs to find something, she just opens up her phone and says, Coleman, where can I find Belmont tubing? Where can I find a filter for a dialysis machine? Well, Coleman knows where all of our stuff is located because it's connected to FSM. So it comes back and says, oh, it's this PAR location, this row, this bin. So being the shifts she works, she's basically alone in the hospital because she works overnight. She doesn't have another colleague she can go to and say, hey, I don't really know where this is. Can you help me find it? So her only other option was a binder that was like this thick that shows where everything is in the hospital. I mean, that blows my mind.
I've worked with customers that literally print out their revised copy or report of the item master so that the nurses have that on workstations to look up.
To me, it's insane. Like, we can literally do a heart transplant, but when I need to find an item, like, I need to pull out this binder. Like, are you serious? Yeah. So we've sped up that process. Let's say she goes in, she grabs the last, package of Belmont tubing. Hopefully you don't run out of that. That's super important. But let's say she does. So she grabs that RFID tag off of that bin and she drops it in a box by the door. There's an RFID reader in there. So we use a data relay to send the information to FSM to say, kick off a requisition for this item at this location. And then we can go through the whole, requisition process that everybody's familiar with. The requisition, the purchase order might go through approvals. We might be printing a PO as we route it through approval so people can see that pixel perfect document and not have to drill back into FSM. And then it goes all the way through the paying off the invoice.
So doesn't mobile supply chain already do that though for customers that are using that application?
It does. There's a few pieces that they might not be using right now, but the biggest difference is all of the data that's going to be passing through the system. We haven't really harnessed that to its full potential. So we look at our different items like the Belmont tubing. We look at our PAR locations. Okay, the location, the row, the bin. Is my hospital organized in a way that it should be? Are the operations that are happening here, do they have the supplies in a location that's close? It might also be warehouse management system. I could be integrated with your WMS. So maybe I have 3-4 different hospitals in an area, and I have different warehouses around. How do I organize those to make them more efficient? And then we talked about inventory intelligence, these requisitions, the POs that come through, the invoices. What do I do with all that data? Well, if I'm connected to Data Fabric, which I am if I'm a Cloud Suite customer, I can now push all that data into Data Lake, and I can come up with predictions. I can help make decisions. I can do anomaly detection. You know, I have my risk and compliance. I touched on that a little bit. You know, Infor GRC is great at looking at who entered this PO, who paid this invoice.
So is this something then that I can potentially integrate with a scheduling tool that maybe procedures are scheduled with, and to predict, hey, next month we have a surge of this procedure happening.
Right.
Order more of these supplies because we know these supplies are typically used with this type of procedure.
Yeah, and this is why I have the disclaimer slide, because you know this is something that we're looking at how do we help our hospitals. You know, we already have connections to your EHR. You know, whichever one you have, we have Cloverleaf. We can pull tons of data from that EHR. We can look at the doctor's preference cards, you know, which is basically a recipe list of this is how I do this procedure. These are the items I need. Well, what if we could take that information and run it through our analysis and see, okay, in 6 months, am I going to have the right parts for a knee replacement? You know, none of those operations happen overnight. They take a long time to get on the schedule. You know, you have all your pre-op appointments, you have your post-op, you might have some items that are required in recovery. You know, so maybe they're not on our preference card, but we know, okay, knee patients require these items after surgery.
So essentially it's more proactive than, hey, I ran out of this supply in this bin in this closet.
Yeah.
Or, you know, somebody says, oh no, we're running low, we're below the threshold or whatever, and it automatically reorders. Essentially, it's proactive to say, hey, over the next 3 weeks, these are the procedures that are happening. Let me just order all those supplies ahead of time or over a period of days to make sure that everything's
right. And let me order them from the right vendors. So I know they're here on time because I have the analytics to back up my decisions. Yeah, it's, you know, and that's just one example. I mean, if we could get into each of these examples, kind of do a deep dive, you know, across the industries that Infor works in. You know, I mean, there's a lot of general solutions we have, like let's look at our AP, AR, our invoice creation, those types of things. And then we've got our healthcare specific examples, that OIG vendor check, an item master update. You know, maybe I don't have an agreement with a GPO, or, you know, an integration set up with like Symmetric is, you know, is somebody that we have an integration out of the box that we support. Maybe I need to update my item master from the manufacturer's websites. Maybe I want to pull pictures from the manufacturer's website, put them in IDM so that when people are actually requesting the items, they can see, yeah, this is what I just pulled from this bin. And all these are out there sitting in our library. You know, so if you subscribe to our enterprise automation solutions, you know, this is what you get. So it's a big change in what we've been doing in the past. Instead of saying, okay, Jeremy, we built these tools for you guys, partners, go figure out how to use them. Customers, go figure out how to use them. We're getting you a starting point. And I think it's a big game changer. One other big change that I want to make sure I cover is I've been using the term augmented intelligence, not necessarily artificial intelligence. So what is augmented intelligence? We're not replacing human beings. We are augmenting them, helping them make better decisions. But to start that journey, there's a couple things we have to do. We have to figure out, how do we define that problem? What am I trying to decide? What am I trying to solve? And a big part of figuring out if I can actually solve that problem is, where's the data? Do I have it? Now, something that's kind of interesting that Infor offers as part of our Augmented Intelligence solution is these first 2 steps. If you reach out to us, we do those for free. You don't have to sign anything to start up. So you can come to us and say, I've got an inventory problem. Do you think you guys could help me? We'll sit down, we'll analyze your data, take some of those first steps to like integrate things and look at it, and we'll say, yeah, we do have a solution for you. This is the ROI you can expect. And then we move along the process. What are the targets we're trying to hit? What features are we going to use that are part of our AI solution? Let's get the model tuned, and then let's deploy it and maintain it. So that's kind of the piece that people aren't very familiar with, so I wanted to make sure I covered that. But this whole time we've been talking about all of the different capabilities that we have as, Infor. If we look down in these purple boxes, those are just the enabling capabilities. It's things that are required. I need some sort of security layer. I need some sort of document management. But what really makes a difference with these enterprise automation solutions, and as I start adopting these technologies that again are part of the platform, that's how I really create serious value. Because I start having transformative, solutions, things that are tailored to my company, and they're highly personalized. And that's really where I want to get. And I know we're kind of coming up on the end of the hour here, but there's a couple things I do want to touch on that I think are really important. The first is our marketplace. RPI, you guys have some solutions out there, marketplace.infor.com. That's where you'll find some of these enterprise automation solutions. So if you want to know more, go out there, look at the different solutions, and then contact us. Use this button. Let us know you're interested in something, or reach out to our partners like RPI, and we can work with you guys, to help implement some of these solutions. And then this is kind of the most exciting thing for me, coming from development, growing up a developer, is our new portal, developer.infor.com. We just launched this month, 3 weeks ago, basically. People come to us and they ask, you ask me all the time, like you're implementing IDM for a customer. Hey, Sam, how do I do this? What's the best way to do this? That's not scalable. I love talking to you, but it'd be easier if you could just go here. So we've created this developer portal, and we've launched it, where we go over all the different components of Infor OS. You can play with some of the APIs that we offer in our cloud suites. We can offer design suggestions, tutorials, best practices. We have links to our community and to our marketplace. So a lot of the content you've been seeing on YouTube, hopefully you've been watching it. A lot of that content is going here.
Yeah, I just saw a link for this recently, last week or 2 weeks ago, probably soon after it was first announced. And I did kind of poke around a little bit. There's definitely a lot of good information out there.
Yeah, and I think we do a good job of providing information to our customers. The feedback we get is, how do I find it? This is, if you're going to remember one thing from today, developer.infor.com, because that's where everything is going to be from now on. And it's kind of the gateway to all these solutions. So I think we might have had some questions come in through the webinar.
Yeah, we have a couple here. First, I have just a comment. I can see this working well with capitated contracts and the new functionality in FSM, specifically, for example, of surgical procedures. I seem to have lost my other question here.
Okay.
I'll come back.
So there's a question on contracts and.
Well, this one is a comment that's probably a good use case.
Yeah, I do.
Question here. Oh, go ahead.
I do believe we are working on a solution around contract management. I don't know where that sits, but I know that has been a very common one that customers have been asking us about. And there's also, to extend that, we're really going to dive deep in that disclaimer slide. If we look at the new technologies like generative AI? How do I analyze the contract that has been uploaded with what has been put into FSM? Those are the things customers are asking us for, and they definitely have merit. That is something that we would love to try and solve and provide a solution for.
This is more of a technical question. Is the integration driven via ion connection points, odds, etc.? Question mark.
Yeah, it can be driven by BODs, it can be driven by APIs, it can be driven by replication sets, it can be driven by IPA if you're an FSM customer. It's that whole iPaaS solution that we already offer. So
basically all of the tools that are already in the toolkit for a Cloud Suite customer.
Yeah, any way you want to get data into the data lake, which is where we prefer it, because we like having, every vendor will say this, but we like to own the data. We like to have it in our database, So we provide tons of different tools, whether it's a data loader, replication sets, ion BODs, just get it into the data lake, and we'll help you with that. You guys can help with that, obviously. And then that's kind of step one.
So I think that's all the questions we got. I want to thank Sam for visiting us and providing insight into these new developments, and Jeremy for co-hosting this webinar. Thank you guys very much, and thank you all for attending.